Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
Welcome back, everyone. We're happy to have you here and looking forward to today's kind of question we've been pondering, which is what if the financial advice you've been given is designed to keep you stuck? So, to kind of kick things off, Jason, just give me a brief overview on what you've been thinking about it.
Well, a week ago, your mom gave us a speech down in Las Vegas at a convention for the company she's involved with. And it was very interesting in that she gave a history of the school system, right? And in the late 1800s, what was desperately needed in America was factory workers, someone that would show up on time, do exactly what they're told, stay at a certain position, do the process over and over again, not question it, go to lunch when they're told, go home when they're told, take vacation when they're told. Well, that's a pretty tough ask for the fact that there's so many people that were farmers. And on the farm, you get up at the crack of dawn, or you get up, when the weather's good and when you can't go out, you do another things. I mean, you're constantly changing things and you're constantly coming up with new ideas. How do we solve this problem? How do we, whatever it is, right? And so what they found, they being the robber barons or whoever that was in wealth, power at the time, is they found a model from the Prussians and how they had invaded other countries and they had pushback from the people that they had conquered. What they did is instigated an education system for the children. And as part of that, they taught about heroes from that country, the conquering country. And so then they grew up thinking, well, these guys are not that bad. And so they instigated that kind of education system to conform or have people conform or transform people from an entrepreneurial mindset, which is farming. Farming is probably one of the ultimate entrepreneurial ventures, right? Constant thinking of a new way. Well, this ground is too tough, or that's whatever. How do we solve this problem? This is what we need to get done, right? And what they did is come in at a very early age. I mean, think about when you go to preschool. You're taught to quiet, sit still, only do those things. You're taught to that when a question's answered, you must give the right answer. And if not, then you're kind of punished or embarrassed or whatever it is. It's not made pushed on you, but there's a structure. And at the end, you have a factory worker. I just found that that was fascinating, right? And that's the kind of advice that we're getting. Okay. And like you start to say, one of this system was designed to keep you stuck. One of the whole, it's not the system is broken, the system was designed that way. And you have to ask yourself the question, why is it that the ultra wealthy don't follow the rules that are given to the general public? And what is it that they're doing, right? That's different than what we're doing or what you're doing as far as when it comes to money and wealth. Why do you think that is, Scott?
I think it goes back to their whole motivation. I think their whole motivation is something that we all crave in some way, shape, or form, but that's control. They want more control rather than control of just their life, which I would say they already have. They want control of everything. They want control of the winds, the waves, the you, me. And so it was built to make you feel like you have some kind of ability to choose, when in reality, it's been built to give them the ultimate control that they so crave. And I think with that lens in mind, a lot of world events make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I agree. What would you say though, this idea that there's a level playing field? You hear that in politics all the time. We got to have a level playing field, a level playing field. What do you think of that?
I I can see it both ways, but in reality, I don't think the average man has a level playing field at all. simply because there's nowhere to learn. There's nowhere where someone's teaching you is like, this is what the system is set up to do. This is why the system is set up to do it, and this is how you compete or win within the system. The system was not set up to make it a level playing field for everyone. It was set up to keep the rich rich and to keep the poor poor. And to transition those gaps are hard. Would you say something else?
No, I'm absolutely in agreement with you. I think one of the things that the system teaches is you stay in school and you get a good job. And once you get a good job, uh, you start funding your 401k as much as you can. So you can get the company match, so you can have this glorious retirement, 30, 35 years in the future. And the reality is how that's set up, you become a partner of the government, by the way, but how that's set up is you can have access to that money. Now that goes against so many things that I've been taught. When I was brought up, there was the mantra, value is in use. If it's not useful, it's really not valuable, regardless of how much it costs. Right, I'll give you an example. I remember I was outside in the front yard and um, Keith Homer, he had a roofing company here in Cache Value. He came by and in the back of his truck, he got out and talked to me for a little while. And I says, "What's that?" He says, "Oh, that's my new hammer." I said, "Wow, that's pretty nice." It was one of these, pneumatic hammers that you could put on shingles on roofs. And it was some ridiculous amount of money. It was like $700 or something, right? And it's like, wow, why would you ever buy a $700 hammer? Well, for me, who's not a roofer and doesn't do stuff like that, that would be an absolute total waste of money, a terrible investment. However, for him and his process and what he did, that was great money. He could earn a lot of money with that hammer for the fact he knew how to use that, right? And so it's like, wow, that's where use is in that. Well, when we have these 401ks and IRAs that's locked up, and we are unable to really get access to much of it. I mean, think about it. You can sometimes get 50%, but the maximum you can get to is like $50,000, and you must pay it back in 5 years. If you don't, then you have to pay income tax. There's all these penalties and stuff as though they're trying to say, hey, this is for your own good. The reality is, since you don't have access to that money, you got to go someplace else to get access to money. I want a new car. I want to buy a house. I want to do a rental property. Whatever big ticket item you're looking for and you don't have the money for it, you now go or are forced to go to someone else and borrow that money. And then you mortgage your future to pay that back. You are the collateral. Right now, I might buy a car and maybe put 10% down, but that other 90% to be paid back, that's me, my future ability to earn money. That's what's at risk, right? Or that's what's the collateral for that loan. And so now I'm a slave to that entity or whatever to pay them interest. And it all comes back because I don't have control of my money or my assets. You were going to say something?
Yeah, let me expand on that. So when we're talking about 401ks or Ross or places like this, Edward Jones or Vanguard or these other places, while you can't get access to your money or maybe that interest rate's like 8, 9, 10%. When I go to finance a $500 million project, I'm getting money at 3 and 4 from those entities because they have to deploy that money legally. So not only am I getting use of your money for half of what you're getting it used for, I get to buy an asset and I have all the ability in the world to control that. On top of that is then when you, as the consumer, go to get a loan, let's say you're getting a home loan right now, you're 7% right now. If I'm getting money at 3%, your money at 3%, and turn around buying stock in that very bank who's then loaning it out at 7 or 8%, it's an infinite return. And so, yeah, not only are you becoming the chattel, but you're not getting any of the benefit from within.
And so it goes on and on again. And that's why it's not a late, I mean, the whole idea of a level playing field is it doesn't exist. It does, but it doesn't. It does for those that understand it. And so you must start to understand and learn the rules of the game. I mean, think about it. Let's say we're playing Monopoly, and all you ever did was roll the dice and go around the board and collect $200 every time you pass go, right? And you attempted to stay out of jail. That was how you did it. You you wouldn't last very long. You never bought any assets or did anything. You're just simply attempting go get hurry, I gotta get past go so I can get my money again. I can get my money again, right? But you're landing on other people's assets and paying them rent. That is the vast majority of people in America and probably in the world right now, is that's how they're playing the game. They're not getting benefits from ownership, where the 1% they start to have assets, cash producing assets. They have cash flow, and they also, because of those assets and how they're situated, they have the ability to control their taxation. They're taxed completely different. And again, that makes the playing field uneven, but it's available to everybody. So let's talk a little bit more about the rule of control. What would you say wealthy people, the difference with the 1% and when it comes to control?
I know we've talked about other episodes, but the fact that they even want control, they're willing to sacrifice immediate needs and wants for control, whether that's control over a process, control over their future, you name it. Um, yeah, I don't know.
So the
What do you think?
proverbial, I mean, delayed gratification. Some people say, well, those that can, have delayed gratification can possibly get there. Some of the ultra wealthy don't ever really need to have delayed gratification. They already have it because the generation before them has built that. But if you're the new generation, right? If you're the generation that's going to generate the wealth and then be able to pass it on to the next generation, there needs to be some delayed gratification. I am not going to, you know, in the venture a coffee drinker, I'm not going to have that latte every single day, or I'm not going to eat out as much, or I'm not going to do this or whatever. And then you're putting money someplace where then you're in control, and it can be a source of capital for you when you go to build assets or purchase assets. Therein lies the real secret is in order to get out of the paycheck to paycheck, there has to be savings and there has to be ownership and control with that money. And there's very few ways to do that. However, that's possible for everyone, right? So, have you ever considered, Scott, what it would feel like to use your own money without waiting for a loan approval or a market timing?
Well, I don't have to consider that's how I operate.
And why do you do that?
Because I can't, I am like that top 1%. I crave control.
What
And
is it?
so, and on top of that, as I've come to learn, is like the deal of a lifetime comes around once a week. The difference is who has the liquidity to act on it. Right? Like I've got all kinds of hard money loans that come in. Like I had one that came in on Thursday. I was ready to fund on Friday. It was it was 475,000, 15% annualized return. He's only going to need it for 9 months. So it's really more like 30 to 45% annualized return. And the collateral against that was 1.1 million. You're at what, 43, 48% loan to value. He defaults. You walk away with two properties that are kicking off about 6 to 7 grand a month in rents. Yeah, I would love to own both of those for 475. But the issue is like no one could move fast enough. Well, I had the liquidity. I can move fast enough. And so the best deals come to liquid cash.
Is that where cash is king comes from?
I think so, because cash is not king in all cases. Like, for example, when you walk into a dealership these days and you're like, oh, I've got cash, give me a better deal. They won't. Right? That's not what that rule was designed for. It was designed for opportunities that arise where I can demand terms, especially when it's a really good deal. I can demand outrageous terms in some cases simply because they have no other route forward. I am their only path and they have to pay the gatekeeper.
And so those with money, when they access capital, they're accessing it, let's say on wholesale level, right? Where the vast
Mhm.
majority of people are paying retail. Or let's put it this way, those that are in control can have access to capital at a wholesale level, where those that are not in control don't have liquidity, they're paying retail. Like you said a minute ago, retail right now on a hard money loan is in the teens, right? The interest rate's in the teens.
Mhm.
Where those that have liquidity and can jump on things and have control, they're able to access money at wholesale and get really good rates of return. Really good rates of return. Why do you think, one of the things and pieces of advice that we get from banks and investment houses is, fund your 401k, get a CD, et cetera, et cetera. Why is it that those same investment houses and banks are not putting their own money in their own CDs?
It's a good question. What do you think?
Well, they know where they should be putting it. And we've talked about this before. Invite the listeners to go do it. Just search BOLI, that stands for bank-owned life insurance. And what you're going to find is that all the major banks out there have billions upon billions of dollars in permanent life insurance. Is that's a place to store cash that's liquid, easy to get to, right? And they can get access to that money, that capital, if you will, on a wholesale basis, and then go get retail returns on it. It's a possibility that's unbelievable. Okay. They're telling us one thing, yet they're doing something else. That's part of the education we talk about, learning how to know what's going on and do the things that are going on behind the curtain, if you will. I don't know. Does that
Yeah.
make
And I
sense?
would even add to that is a lot of times the reason the banks aren't doing it is because when they go to do a deal, like a real estate transaction, let's say they've got this property at $500 billion that they've put together. By the time they're funding it, their actual money is outstanding maybe less than a week because they sell it off secondary market, your pension funds, your to you unknowingly is what's going on. And so their rate of return is sky high because they're dropping that meter in a taxi so quickly. And so a lot of what's going on in their sources of capital, their whole thing is like, look, I want to control this entire process, but then we're going to completely eliminate the risk or as much as possible. Like hold something for a week, make 10%. You can't be mad at that. Right?
You bet.
So,
And then on top of all this thing, let's just assume for a minute you're not as smart as you are. Okay. And I just come to you and say, would you be open to exploring some legal ways to reduce your lifetime tax bill without even working any harder? It's an easy yes, right? It's an easy yes. Well, in understanding about this level playing field, we have to understand how the wealthy use structures, entities, life insurance, etc., to mitigate or reduce taxation. There's a thing called depreciation. Most people don't understand what that is or how that works. There's a thing called um, the cost segregation. We did have a podcast on that at one point about cost segregation, how that allows you to legally pay less than taxes. It's not that anyone's doing anything in some sort of loophole or anything. They understand the roadmap, the US code, tax code, that's all of it, all said and done, is 70 plus thousand pages. It's simply a guidebook to a path in which they want you to walk down, because those that are in control and they're actually the one that's producing the jobs for someone else. That's really producing, it's the engine of our economy. The United States economy, I believe, is right around 75% generated by small business owners. And so those small business owners are rewarded for what they do, how they're in control, how their education and what they're doing. And it's truly is um, a system that you must understand. That makes sense. What would you say about taxation and entities?
Yeah, I would just say that everything meets together. This is taxation is a cog in a car, just as the right entity is the right cog, and they all interlock and work together. And if you don't have the right configuration of them all, they work against you. And so, yeah, like taxes, huge deal, huge deal. And the more that you can get to reduce them, the better. And a lot of times, wealthy families do that with debt. They do that with whole life policies. They do that in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe we need to come back on another episode. I know we're running out of time here, but maybe we need to come back on another episode sometime and talk a little bit more about entities and how that actually happens, that they're basically persons and how they're taxed and how they're taxed different than a W-2 employee and everything. But maybe there'll be something from another time. And depending on if we get some comments on this episode, we'll know where to go from there. Do you have any last comments, Scott, that we can sort of wrap this whole thing up, talking about that? We have what we've been talking about is that when you feel like you're stuck and you don't know why, it truly is the system is designed that way, and what you need to do to understand the system, understand the rules. Again, back to the Monopoly game. If you didn't understand that you need to be buying assets as you're going around the board to win the game, and you're simply attempting to get around the board to, collect 200 when you pass go and not go to jail, and you think that's the game, you've lost. You've absolutely lost. When you understand, hey, I need to have assets, so when other people land on my board, I get paid some money, and that's how you win the game. Well, the same kind of thing is happening in real life. That's one of the reasons I love Monopoly, and I've always had my kids play it, you guys play it, and talk about it. Anyway,
Yeah, I would agree with that. Remember, the game is, again, it's against you. And so for you to understand what is going on, you need to think like that 1%. Think like someone that thinks out 10 decades, 100 years, a couple centuries. And a lot more will start to seem clear. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We're always happy to have you here. And if you wanna if you want to connect with Jason or I, make sure to hit us up on one of our social media profiles. Happy to DM you and have a conversation, talk back and forth. If you love the episode, leave us a 5-star review. Really helps us out. And last, remember that mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Make sure they are the best. We will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.